Hello everyone, it's Elliot. Those teeth were just impractical. I'm not going to use those. It was a nice idea. Hi everyone and happy Halloween. It's Elliot here. I know I look a bit different. I know this is the best disguise you've probably seen ever. But yeah, it is still me and I'm still here to talk about films. But this video is going to be a bit different because I want to talk about my favourite horror films. So I'm going to give you a rundown of my top 5 favourite horror films of all time. Before I get into it, I want to say that this was a painstaking list to make because I love so many different horror films. There are so many films I could have included in here, and picking 5 was just so difficult. I started with about 50 films and I've eventually whittled it down to 5. So if there are any glaring omissions in this, films that should have been in here, then they probably were in consideration, but I ended up picking these 5. Okay, with all of that preamble out of the way, I'm just going to get straight into it because I'm just dying to talk about these films. At number 5, we have The Witch, a New England folktale, which came out in this very year of 2016, and it's directed by Robert Eggers. Even though this is the first film on my list, it's easily the most difficult one to argue for, and this is because it's new, so people haven't really set their minds on it yet, and secondly because it was so divisive when it came out. So among my film friends, there was one camp who very much hated it and said it was the worst horror film they'd ever seen, and on the other hand, there was a camp of people that said it was a masterpiece of modern horror and it was one of the best horror films they've ever seen. And I'm firmly in that second group. I believe this film is something special. Not only do I think The Witch is special, but I think in years to come there's going to be a lot of revisionist history on this one. I think it will be very much like another film in this list, which was hated upon release, that people then came to appreciate as a true masterpiece of horror. So the story of this one, for the people that don't know, it's about a family in America, and this is in the 1630s, so this is pre-United States, this is colonized America, and it's about a family who's come over from England to set up a new life. But after a disagreement with their settlement, they then are forced to go and live out in the wilderness on the edge of civilization. As they're finally getting settled out on their own, the baby of the family gets snatched, and this sets the whole family into a string of paranoia and hysteria. They don't know what's happened to the baby, they think it could be wolves, or they even think it could be a witch, and it just makes the family go absolutely crazy. So why do I love The Witch? Well, it's modern horror done right. In this day and age, horror films are so hit and miss. In fact, they're a lot more miss than hit. There are swathes of just bad films because they're just going for shock value. They're going for the jump scares or just insane amounts of gore. What The Witch does, instead of going for those shock tactics, is it sets up an eerie and creepy atmosphere that totally unsettles you if you let it. What I'll say is, if you go in with expectations of being scared out of your skin, then you probably will be disappointed. But if you go in allowing the witch to wash over you and just bathe in its creepy atmosphere, then I think you will really enjoy it and you will really be unsettled. And at number 4, a French film from 1960 by the name of Les Yeux Sans Visage, directed by Georges Franju, known by the English name of Eyes Without a Face. And the story in this one is totally messed up. It's about a plastic surgeon whose daughter was in a horrific car accident in which her whole face was disfigured. What this mad professor does is he goes around kidnapping and murdering young women to use in his experiments to try and regain his daughter's beauty. What I love about this film is that it's a twist on the old Frankenstein stories, but instead of creating life like Dr. Frankenstein, the professor in this just wants to create beauty. There are some horrific images in this of girls' faces being peeled off their heads, and even though this film is 60 years old, it is so convincing. There is some just mind-blowing medical horror in this film. Ultimately, this film is a commentary on society's obsession and fixation with beauty, and it's about as poetic as horror films get. In at number 3 is a horror film that absolutely everyone knows. It's The Shining from 1980, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Everyone knows the story of this one, but I'll repeat it anyway. Jack gets a job as a caretaker in a deserted hotel, so he moves there with his family for the winter, and they get isolated from the rest of civilization, and in that time, they find out that a lot of creepy things are going on in said hotel. I mentioned before with The Witch about revisionist history, and with The Shining, this film was hated upon release. It was panned by the critics, audiences didn't like it, yet now it is revered as one of the absolute masterpieces of horror cinema and cinema as a whole. I could talk at length about the genius of Stanley Kubrick and The Shining, but I'll keep it brief. If you've not seen The Shining, go and see The Shining. The film is a labyrinth of imagery and themes, and it deals with isolation and how the human mind copes in such an environment. It is absolutely must-see horror cinema, so please go and see this. In at number 2 is The Innocence from 1961, directed by Jack Clayton, and this is the very film that defines skin crawling for me. It's so unbelievably creepy. It's an adaptation of Henry James's The Turn of the Screw, and it tells the story of a governess who goes to look after 2 children in a massive mansion that she believes is haunted. I can't state enough how creepy and chilling this film is. All of the aspects of the filmmaking, from the directing, the cinematography, the music and the acting, all come together as a perfect blend of how to make a horror film. Ostensibly it's a ghost story, but really it's a mix of paranoia, isolation and claustrophobia, which, as the other films in this list show, are key tenets of the horror genre. It's old, British and black and white, which are things that may put people off, but seriously, do yourself a favour and see The Innocence. And drum roll. Okay, I don't have a drum roll sound effect. In first place, it's The Exorcist from 1973, directed by William Friedkin. Again, pretty much everyone knows the story of The Exorcist, but if you don't, here's a quick rundown. It's about a 12-year-old girl who gets possessed by the devil and a priest with wavering faith who has to find out what the hell is going on. Take out the supernatural element from The Exorcist and the premise is still so chilling. Really, it's a story about a child who is suffering from some sort of illness, yet none of the doctors can diagnose what it is. Now, I'm not a parent, but just the idea of it, of having your child being tortured by something totally unknown, it makes me sick to my stomach. The Exorcist is multi-layered and timeless, and I could talk to no end about it. If you've not seen The Exorcist, you are making a serious mistake. Okay, that's my top 5 horror films of all time. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, but I know some people are going to be annoyed about certain omissions from the list, so please let me know what your top 5 horror films of all time would be in the comments below. Thanks for watching as always, and I hope you have a really spooky Halloween of watching scary films. I'm off now to go trick-or-treating and eat a whole load of sweets that I shouldn't, so I'll bid you my farewell.